Welcome back. Welcome in. It's Country Roads Confidential here at earsports.com. It's a Paramount podcast. I am Mike Casaza here, all by myself, but just for the time being, sort of a special edition here today because West Virginia baseball, once just the bridge between basketball and football seasons, and now the showcase of the spring and summer months here in Morgantown. Well, it gets started on Friday with a four-game series at Jacksonville. And coming off the back-to-back postseason runs this program had, considering the transition from Randy Mazey to Steve Sabins, well aware of the talent that they have coming back, but also coming in from recruiting in the transfer portal, sure seems like the anticipation level is pretty high. We've done a couple stories to preview the Mountaineers and what to expect, but we decided that we would actually talk to someone who knows a whole lot more about this than just me. So we went to Nathanael Rorie, the Director of Technology, Analytics, and Player Evaluation. New position for the Mountaineer baseball program, new addition to the staff. He's been on the ground here in Morgantown since the beginning of January, and he took some time out of the preseason here to talk to us about his position, what it's like being the director of analytics in such a stat-driven sport, some of the differences between professional sabermetrics and college, what to expect from the Mountaineers on the field, what it's like recruiting in the transfer portal, and so many other topics that are relevant to his job and how he sees the team, the sport, the season, and so much more. Again, he is Nathanael Rorie, an undergrad student at Belmont who kind of rose the ranks there in their baseball department, and now a graduate assistant with the Mountaineers in charge of, again, evaluations, analytics, and technology. Life is good for him. It'll get better when they have that biometric performance center up and running before too long. A whole lot more that he will share with us when we begin. Thanks for stopping by. Hope you enjoy the program. Thanks to Nathaniel, and if you get a chance to see him online, please thank him for participating and sharing what he knows about this team relative to his line of work and what we can look forward to when the Mountaineers do play ball. Joining me now to help preview the 2025 West Virginia baseball season now, a new addition to the program, kind of the continuation of things are growing here, evolving under Steve Sabins. He is the Director of Analytics, Nathanael Rorie. Nathanael, thanks so much for taking time out of the schedule here. Really busy. I appreciate it, I'm sure. Real simple question here. Analytics, I have to ask you, do you watch Moneyball or did you roll your eyes at that because this is not how it works in real life?
Yeah, no, I've watched Moneyball. I don't even know how many times, countless times. Definitely a favorite movie. Get that question a lot, and yeah, I guess I probably fit the stereotype there. Definitely love Moneyball.
Cover this a little bit before we started, and I'll just kind of recap here. But you were a student at Belmont doing undergrad work and kind of took the escalator up the ranks here a little bit, so to speak. Doing analytics, doing video scouting, things like that, figuring out what's beneath the surface. And here you are at West Virginia now as they, again, continue to try to grow as all the college sports staffs, it seemed like, regardless of the sport, they're all growing. And here we are, director of analytics, but you've only been on the ground here for about a month, you were saying. That is not going to be an excuse for anybody if you're not doing your job. They want you to catch up, which could be a great thing too, because you've really got to learn about the team in a broad sense, but also with your specific interests and what you bring to the program, you've had to look through that lens as well. Really broad question, but let's start like this then. What have you learned about this team that we'll see on the field for the first time Friday?
I've learned a lot, like you kind of alluded to. It's definitely been quite the scenario of hitting the ground running and definitely getting a crash course on Mountaineer baseball and where the program's at and where everything's trying to head. But I've definitely learned a lot about the team and this first month or so, and the culture that Coach Sabins has uh, is continuing on. That the culture that Coach Mazey had helped build, and now that Coach Sabins is kind of taking over and trying to take the program to the next step. Um, and so it's definitely been a really great place to be. I really enjoyed my first month here, but as far as what I've learned about the team, it's just the team really embodies what it means to be a Mountaineer. I know it's something that I've heard Coach Sabins talk about several times already. how being a Mountaineer is different, and he really wants the guys to understand what that looks like. You're playing for, you're not playing yourself, you're playing for your teammates and the people in the stands and the people all across the state of West Virginia, and that's a huge responsibility. And so I think that's been a really cool thing to see. Just the culture, hard work, playing together, playing for the people beside you and your community. I think that's awesome. And there's a team full of a lot of guys who are really talented and who not just embody that mentality both on the field and but also off the field. And so just definitely learned a lot about obviously their abilities on the field, but also the culture that's been built here and that is continuing to be built as the program continues to head in the right direction.
You're learning about your surroundings. We're learning about what the director of analytics does here. Again, new position here. But it makes a lot of sense given the sport and the way the numbers define it and how the game is played. Um, how have they tapped you on the shoulder and let you go to work? And what have they asked from you as far as, hey, director of analytics, direct me on the analytics here? Give you the roster? Or they tell you to look at certain strengths and weaknesses? What's beneath the surface? Where does it begin? And how does a day or a week or a month go for you?
Yeah, definitely. There's, I came into a pretty good situation. We have uh, a ton of student managers that help with a bunch of different data collection, and we have technologies like TrackMan and things like that that we're using on a daily basis to collect a tons of data on our pitchers and hitters. And there was, really a lot of resources already, in place for me to kind of hit the ground running with from the fall. And um, it's been really cool because, even before I got here, Coach Sabins was already leaning into me, wanting to know how I think about things, the way I see the game, how I analyze different things. And so it's been really cool because he and the rest of the coaching staff, they definitely uh, like to use me as a resource and, kind of get my opinion on what I see with the numbers and the advanced analytics and the things that beneath the surface or the nitty gritty that they might, not see at a first glance. And so, um, they might come to me and ask my opinion on something or, hey, have you noticed this or certain things. So it's really trying to find that competitive edge that you can get from the different advanced analytics and things that we have to try and help the coaching staff make the best decisions for, each individual player and also the team. So just really trying to aid them in whatever way they need to help the program result in the most success.
Do you think the way that people might consider, again, not to go back to Moneyball, but like Major League Baseball, minor league baseball analytics, the college game is different. Um, are all of the metrics the same, or do you value more a certain list and value less a certain list just because the games are so different at the two different levels?
Yeah, no, the game's definitely different. The biggest difference is, kind of just what you have access to.
Hmm.
And through TrackMan we have, your standard ball flight metrics on pitching and hitting. And outside of that, it's is where you really see a lot of variability. Across the country as far as what teams do have and what teams don't have. And so it's really it's interesting to to see how much that differs. And I don't know necessarily that we value different things as opposed to major league what a major league organization might value. They have more things that they can value, I guess to put it that way. Most organizations they have just about every single piece of technology that you could ever want. And, we're definitely getting there and continuing to add and progress on that side here as well. But I wouldn't say we necessarily value anything differently. It's, more, maybe a little bit more simpler to put it that way. But yeah, it's definitely, the analytics has definitely taken over college baseball in the way that it already had major league, and it's only growing. Not just at the high major level, but mid majors and really all across the country.
One more about you and your job here before we get onto the team and what we're going to see on the field here at Jacksonville. But you mentioned something there. The coaches might tap you on the shoulder and say, "Hey, what do you think about this? What do you see here?" You evaluate. I don't know if you study film or at bats or whatever, but you do your work, and you come back with an answer, a response. Where does it go from there? Do you talk to a player? Do you talk to a coach, and the coach talks to a player? Like when your work is done, as far as the answering the question, that has to be actionable at some point. They're asking it for a purpose to go back to a player. What happens there, and then what do you look for when that start the process, when that process gets started?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, when a coach comes to me, I definitely try to make sure that whatever my response is or whatever I come back with is something that they can easily digest and then take it to the player. Or if it's not something they need to take to the player, something that um, that they understand right away. I think that's always kind of the big trick for data guys like myself is, we obviously understand the numbers at a very high level, but whenever you're trying to explain things to other people, giving it to them in a way that they also explain or understand what you're explaining to them. Um, and so, uh, yeah, it's usually, if a coach comes to me, I'll usually go back to them and then let them, uh, you know, make the decision what they do with that information. But sometimes players will come to me as well and ask things, out of curiosity. Hey, what's my fastball doing? What's happening here? And I'll talk to them. I'll tell them what I see. What I know and that sort of thing. So it's definitely goes both ways, but it's really, the big thing for me is just trying to make sure that whatever information I give is given in a way that is digestible for whoever's receiving it.
All right, I lied. One more question because you got my attention there. That's very interesting. Again, new position here. Players have not had access to this before. They can look at numbers and video and get an idea, but now they have someone they can go to. Can you take me through like an example? Don't get too proprietary on me here, but general or specific. When someone has said, "Man, we have a director of analytics. I should go to him, ask about my fastball, whatever." But how has that gone, and how have you been received relative to the roster and having this resource around right now?
Yeah, it's cool. Like obviously, I feel like every week, my relationships with the players are growing, and as that happens, the players start to trust you more, want to pick your brain and those sorts of things, and that's definitely on par with, it was a very similar experience at Belmont. Over the course of my time, you build that trust with the players, and then they want to know what you're thinking and that sort of thing. So it's really, I always try and look at it as, a two-way street that if I can build, to me, it's more important when it comes to my interaction with the players to build a relationship with them and build that trust. And then, if there is something that they want to know from me or they're curious, if they have that trust, they'll come to me. But, I think the relationship aspect is really important. Um, and, it's an important piece for our coaches too. And I think our coaching staff here really values that. But that's definitely something that I try and reinforce for myself too.
Okay, let's go to the team now. What we're going to see here. Fall baseball before you got here, but I'm sure you went back and revisited that. Steve
Mhm.
Statement said that I believe there was a three-game series recently. He said everybody in the rosters had about 25 at bats. The starting pitchers have thrown about 70 pitches. You have a body of work to study and evaluate and now project. Um, what do you think this team looks like, plays like, acts like when they do finally throw out the first pitch and get going here?
Yeah, I mean, my first impression here, a couple weeks of scrimmages and all that has just been like how deep the roster is. We've got uh, a bunch of guys on both sides of the ball that can really impact the game in a positive way, and a lot of guys that we feel comfortable putting in the game, which is it's a really good problem to have, right? You can only play nine guys at a time, but having um, considerably more than that you want to put in the game that you feel deserve to be in the game. It's a really good challenge to have, and it's definitely a good problem to be in, a good spot to be in, and so we're really deep on both sides of the ball. Um, we've got like I said, a lot of hitters that have put together really good springs. They're showing us a lot. They deserve to be in the lineup, and a lot of pitchers too that are competing for innings. Guys that have showed a lot of improvement from the fall, and guys that are showing us that that they deserve to be on the mound as well. So it's a really good spot to be in when you have a lot of players, more players than you can physically play, who are deserving of that time. So it's a good spot to be in. It also kind of provides a fun challenge going into the season.
Okay. Another thing that Steve Saban said was that, well, two things. One, you can still hit the ball really hard, really far, but because it's a younger roster and power tends to come later, that maybe that's not quite where it had been, but also a really athletic team. He said maybe about even, but maybe a little bit more athletically. I know that's not like an analytical thing or a sabermetric thing, but when you think about athleticism in baseball, you think about like John Kruk. Man, I'm not an athlete, I'm a baseball player, right? It's different though in college because what they do, they've run so much, they've bunted so much, they really have to make plays in the field. You better be athletic too. What can you do with this athleticism that he said they have and that you've probably seen a witness to? What type of product can that deliver on the field?
Yeah, it definitely adds another aspect to your team. It's really interesting because you see, and especially last year we saw in college baseball, home runs are really ticking up, and everyone's chasing power, and that's it's great. Home runs are awesome, but um, it's really great to have a super athletic team that can do the small things that can put bunts in play, can move runners over, can steal bags, can get an extra 90 feet on the base pass. Those things are a lot of times the things that'll be the difference between you winning and losing ball games. And so having a really athletic team that can do those things well, it really provides an extra edge to be able to do a lot of different things, throughout the game, but especially in late game scenarios, to try and make a difference and winning more baseball games.
Okay. And then if power can develop later in a career, even later in the season for a younger player, can you director of analytics or an assistant coach, whatever, can you help the player generate power? If it's launch angles, if it's, I don't know, swinging at the right pitch and the right count, is there something that you can examine, explore, and develop in a player to help him develop power?
Yeah, there's definitely things you can do to help a player develop power. Our hitting coaches are really great, and helping provide them with different information as far as batted ball data, swing rates, and those types of things. Kind of helping them to, especially younger players. They're seeing better pitching than they've ever seen before, and trying to adjust to the pitching at this level. So helping them, refine their approach at the plate, learn more about their swings, all of those sorts of things. There's valuable information that I can give to, our hitting coaches to help develop them as all around hitters and help things like power and stuff come along as, they get more at bats, more reps, they get older, all of those things kind of culminate together.
Okay. One more I'm going to borrow from Steve Sabins here, but he again, this is something that might involve you and certainly the coaching staff working in concert. But he said that the lineups could be matchups. You know, who's great against left-handed pitching, who's hot, who can really run against a defense. You may have certain guys who are regulars, but as you fill two or three spots in a lineup, let's say, it might be dependent on, who's on a roll, who's slumping, but also what opportunities are there against an opponent and the way they defend, the way they pitch, the way they score. I don't know. Is that part of your day to day as well? Making sure that the right lineup is out there and that, or even understanding the opponent too. We haven't even talked about that side of it. Understanding the opponent and what possibilities are there, what strengths they have, what weaknesses they have that you might want to, I don't know, avoid or expose.
Yeah, absolutely. We're constantly running reports and analyzing, what our players are doing, and it's definitely there's a lot of useful information that we can take away from these fall scrimmages as for our hitters. Not just whether they perform better against righties or lefties, but different types of pitches, different types of pitchers. All those things are things that we take into account and are trying to evaluate more and more as much as we can. And so just constantly analyzing any different reports, trying to find different areas maybe we haven't looked at yet to, to make sure that we're putting, the the best guys on the field that day or the guys who we believe have give us the best chance to win. And so for me, that it's just providing Coach Savins with the reports and the data that I have available to me, and letting him look at that and make, the decision that he feels is best for the team. So it's definitely something that we look at a lot and we're constantly evaluating.
Let's switch gears here. Recruiting it. I'm not sure if you've done much or any recruiting it for the future, but certainly you're familiar with it in the past. And I would imagine, again, the lens through which you look is valuable too, because I just think of a couple players who are on the roster right now that come from, I'm trying to think of Kartsonis, for example, from Kent State. Injury history, but when he's been going good, he's been going good before. You might look at a guy like Griffin Kern, a Division two player. Maybe that's not projectable necessarily for Division one, but if he's got some things, it works. Not those two as examples to use here, but just ones for me to reference. But as you're looking for players who are not the obvious like top flight picks, but are still valuable, that there is something there. Kevin Youkilis, Greek God of Walks, one of those things. Are there avenues that you think that West Virginia will value or that you will bring to the table and say, look at this. Maybe it's a something you all have in common, but as you do begin to look at the transfer portal or recruits, what analytical aspects do you consider that can unearth something about someone that can be valuable, but it might be hidden?
Yeah, I think it definitely helps having a lot of data, especially for, you know, guys who, from the Division One level. But then also, other levels, there's some stuff available, but having that to, kind of take a deeper look and figure out, you know, is there more to this guy than what appears? They might have, not had great numbers at the place before, but you were, based on their pitch shapes, where they're using their pitches wrong, or were they throwing them in the wrong spots, or did should they have thrown more of this pitch and less of another pitch? And so, I think for me, it's trying to find. Um, ways where a guy who maybe didn't have as much success in the past, if there's some obvious, maybe even not as obvious changes that you can make that can kind of unlock them and take them to another level. Those are definitely opportunities that exist through things like the transfer portal. So, it's definitely trying to find, maybe your hidden gem or a guy who isn't, maybe the biggest name or the biggest splash in the portal, but someone who, you feel like you can develop in short time to really make an impact on the program.
Last question with you, Nathaniel. Before we recorded, I promised I wasn't going to ask about rotations or lineup specifics, and I'm not going to. But I do want to talk a little bit about what you know and like a viewer's guide for people who are going to be following these games online or on ESPN Plus or in person eventually here too. But let's start at the beginning. How do you think this looks and operates? And then what sort of improvements, evolutions do you think that this lineup, this pitching staff, this defense is capable of as, they get reps, they get familiar, they get at bats, they get innings on the mound. It's never going to be in February what it's going to be in May, you hope, right? But where do we start and how do you see it evolving?
Yeah, I think to start in the lineup, there's we return a handful of guys who have experience, but there's still a lot of guys who don't. And so it's definitely going to be, getting, those guys who've earned opportunities, them getting their chance and seeing who gives us the best the best chance to win. I wouldn't expect the lineup to necessarily look the same every single day, especially the first um, couple of weeks. But I think you're definitely gonna get a lot of guys who are out there and compete really hard and try and earn their spot in the lineup and try and solidify themselves. Because, at the end of the day, that's what everybody wants. They want to be one of the nine guys on the field day in and day out for the Mountaineers, trying to win baseball games. And so that's a really cool place to be at. And then, on the mound, it's kind of similar. A lot of guys who haven't necessarily gotten opportunities before. A lot of the big innings eaters from last year are gone, and so it's going to be a lot of new faces and a lot of guys who haven't gotten as much opportunity before. But it's the same thing. The opportunity is there for all of those guys, and so it's going to be very similar. A lot of guys who want their opportunity, want to make the most of it, and want to solidify their spots as the season goes on. So I think it's going to be a really fun team to watch, and you're going to see um, probably a lot of different faces, but I don't think that should scare you.
I don't think anybody's scared. That's Nathanael Rorie, the director of analytics for WVU Baseball. The Mountaineers get going 4 game series Friday, doubleheader Saturday, game Sunday. 4 games, 3 days to kick off the season here. Nathaniel, can't thank you enough for hanging out. I appreciate it. Best of luck to you. Go get them.